and I'll give you the thumbs up. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nicolette, and I'm the Director of Public Relations at Jefferson, and we're really excited to be doing these live sessions, and we're so glad you're joining in with us today because today's town hall is all things FAFSA. We know that filing the FAFSA can be an overwhelming experience when getting ready for college, and today we have some fantastic professionals here to walk you through filing the FAFSA and answer any questions you have live. So I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Lindsay and Molly for introductions. Take it away, guys.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Molly Gazenhouse. I am from Kentuckiana Works College Access Center, or KCAC for short. We are lovely partners with Jefferson.
And I'm Lindsay Driscoll, and I am the Director of Financial Aid at Jefferson Community and Technical College, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you about this important topic.
I was going to say, Caleb, we could go ahead and go to the next slide. Today we're gonna do a short overview of the entire FAFSA application. We're going to talk about what's needed to complete the application as efficiently as possible. We'll talk about where the application can be completed, when and how often you have to complete the application. We're going to talk about an important tool that the FAFSA allows you to use from the IRS called the IRS Data Retrieval tool. We'll talk about who's considered a parent on the application, and then talk about really how the FAFSA determines if you're an independent or dependent student and what it actually does to figure out your financial need. We'll hopefully take some questions from you as well as we go along and let you know the next steps to obtaining your financial aid as efficiently as possible. So before you get started with the FAFSA, you definitely want to gather some important information. It'll allow you to be ready to answer all required questions. You're going to need first your Social Security number. If you're a dependent student, you're going to need your parent's Social Security number. Again, we're going to discuss more specifics about who a dependent student is in the eyes of the FAFSA later on. If you're a non-citizen to the United States, you're going to need your alien registration number. Some important financial information that you're going to need is your federal tax information. That form is going to be called a 1040. Also, if you have any untaxed income, you'll need records of that. For example, if you receive child support or pay child support, or if you receive any disability benefits, you'll have to get that untaxed information together. And lastly, you'll need information on your cash, checking, and savings account, or any assets that are held in your name or your parents' name. Here's just an example, a visual example of the information that you'll want to look at before starting that FAFSA. That's the federal 1040. As you can see there, it says 2018 at the top. The 2021 FAFSA looks at that 2018 tax information. You'll also see an example of a W-2. So it's possible that you didn't file taxes or weren't required, but you may have received a W-2. So that's important to have on hand. These are also some other visual examples of important information that you're going to need. Obviously, that Social Security card, then a permanent resident card, your I-94, and then an electronic I-94. Again, if, for example, you have a parent that doesn't live in the United States and they do not hold a Social Security number, that's fine. It's okay to provide all zeros for that individual. But if you are a Social Security number holder, it's important that you would properly enter that information on the FAFSA application. Again, before getting started on the FAFSA, you're going to want to make what's called an FSA ID. It's just a fancy way of saying a username and password that allows you to not only sign the FAFSA, but get access to other important federal student aid information. And again, if you are a dependent student, at least one of your parents is going to need to make an FSA ID. And again, in order to create that FSA ID, you must have a social security number. A mobile phone number and an email address can be verified and linked to that information, which is really important for future use as well. So now that you have everything together for the FAFSA, going to the correct website is very important. You must remember that FAFSA is an acronym that simply means Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The application is free of charge. It is provided by the government at FAFSA.gov. The application is available in both English and Spanish. You can always choose that at the top right corner of the site, which language you prefer. And then recently, the application can even be completed on a mobile device. However, for those first-time completers, I really recommend using a computer to make sure all your information is inputted accurately. Each FAFSA considers a year of school for a student. So as you can see here, depending upon when you're attending school, you'll see that you need to complete a particular FAFSA for that time frame. And then a particular federal tax information is needed. So for example, the upcoming school year is the 2020-2021 FAFSA. It opened last October, on October 1st of 2019, and it looks at your 2018 federal taxes. So again, unlike the application that you use to get into college that you only complete once, the FAFSA is an application that has to be renewed each year that you want to go to school. So each year that you're attending college, a new application will need to be completed. And again, it will consider different tax information, and you'll want to enter that proper tax information for each year that you want to go to school.
And now I'm going to talk a little bit, starting out, about the IRS Data Retrieval tool. The IRS Data Retrieval tool is a really helpful tool that will help allow parents and students to automatically transmit the information that was on a parent or student's 1040 from the 1040 to the FAFSA. It is something that really is helpful for the parent or the family who's filling it out. It gives them a lot less room for error, and it helps speed some things up for them as they're working on that. Also, it may be helpful once it's time to start school and you're hearing from your school's financial aid office. Sometimes less documentation would be requested if a family uses this tool, and since the information has already been verified by the IRS. There are certain tax filers, though, that are unable to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool, and those are outlined here on this slide. Those tax filers include students who do not indicate on the FAFSA that the tax return was completed. There is a choice of that on the FAFSA, whether or not it was completed or will be completed. If you don't say that it was completed, it's not going to allow you to transfer that data. If there is a marriage date on the FAFSA of January 2018 or later, because that would change how your FAFSA or your tax return filing status would be. If the first three digits on the Social Security number are 666, if someone filed a non-U.S. tax return, if someone married and filed as head of household, they would be unable to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool. And if neither married parent entered a valid SSN. And finally, if a non-married parent or both married parents entered zeros for their SSN, and there are certain situations where that is acceptable. So now we're going to talk a little bit about reporting your parents' information. This can get sometimes a little bit confusing as everybody has different households that they live in, and sometimes you have to be thinking about who should be entered as a parent on that FAFSA. The person who should be entered as a parent on your FAFSA are your legal parents, meaning your biological or adoptive parents, or in other words, potentially the parents who are on your birth certificate or are determined by the state as being your parent. If your legal parents are not married to each other and live together, you would answer questions regarding the both of them, as long as they're living in the same household. If your parent is widowed or was never married, answer the question about that parent. So if they're by themselves, enter that question. If your parents are divorced or separated and don't live together, answer the questions about the parent with whom you lived with more during the last 12 months. Also, in regards to that one there, if your parents are remarried and live with one of your step parents, their financial information would also need to be considered on that form. There are some dates here on this slide that are important to kind of keep in mind, as they are going to be asked on the FAFSA. The following is an illustration of who are not your parents unless they have legally adopted you. Those people are a widowed step-parent. So if your parent was married to someone who was not a biological parent and that person passed away, they would not be considered on the FAFSA. Grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers and sisters, and aunts and uncles. These may be people that you live with and that are part of your family, but if they are not your adopted parents, you would not enter their information on the FAFSA. This slide shows a lot of details about who is considered an independent student. When you file a FAFSA, it will ask you a series of questions that is going to try to determine your dependency status. If you can answer yes to any of these questions, you're considered independent. If you answer no to all of them, you are considered a dependent student and would need to have your parents' information on there. The questions that will be asked, and I'll kind of read through them real quickly just so, because it's a little small on the screen, is it's going to ask you if you were born before January 1st, 1997, if, as of today, you are married, if, starting at the beginning of the year, you will be working on a master's or a doctorate degree, if you are serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training, if you are a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, if you have or will have children who will receive more than half of their support from you during the school year, if you have dependents other than your children or spouse who live with you and will receive more than half of their support from you during the school year, if you have at any time since you turned the age of 13 if both your parents were deceased, you were in foster care, or if you were a dependent or ward of the court, sorry, that was a mouthful. If you have been determined by a court in your state of legal residence as an emancipated minor, and if at any time on or after July 1, 2019 for this upcoming school year, were you determined as an unaccompanied youth or homeless, or were self-supporting. You have to, something to keep in mind with some of these questions is that if you were to answer yes to them, supporting documentation may be requested from your financial aid office. So there are some that are a little bit more, black and white, like your age, but there are others that might require a bit more documentation. For example, if you answer yes to the question about homelessness, we may require that you provide us with a supporting letter from a third party or something from a state homeless shelter or something along those lines. All the information on the FAFSA is used to determine a family's expected family contribution, or EFC. All colleges use this EFC to award financial aid. It's going to be the number that tells us if a student is eligible for certain grants, could be used for state aid as well, or what type of loan students could be eligible for. And also another good thing to keep in mind is even after you filed a FAFSA, colleges sometimes need to request additional information from the student or the family. Most oftentimes this is done through a process called verification. And we would just request that we are verifying all the information on the FAFSA to be correct. So just keep an eye out for information requested from your financial aid office. Next step, we kind of talked about verification a little bit, but the next steps that you should take after you file a FAFSA is you will get emailed to the email that you provided on the FAFSA, a student aid report or a SAR. This will give you some details about all the information that you provided and will also give you that EFC and tell you what that EFC means. And like I said in the last slide, be on the lookout for additional communications from the school. They may need additional documentation. Verification, like I said, is a common reason why we request additional information. And what verification is a process that the government requires for financial aid offices to verify that the information on the FAFSA is correct. They will automatically select, and historically about 1/3 of all people who file a FAFSA. And what we would require in those situations is that the family who filed the FAFSA to provide us with documentation that verifies that all the information is correct. So for example, we might request your 1040, a copy of your 1040 or a tax transcript to make sure that that information is correct. So again, just be on the lookout if in case additional documentation is required. And if you have questions, you should always feel free to contact the school's financial aid office. They'd be happy to walk you through any sort of questions that you may have. We understand that the process can be a bit confusing and, may not be things that we're used to answering, questions that you may not be used to answering. So feel free to contact that school and let them know. Some common mistakes when it comes to filing a FAFSA. I always think the biggest mistake a student can make is to not file the FAFSA. Although someone may think that they are ineligible for certain grants or other forms of aid because of their income or some other reason, it never hurts to submit it and try. There are some state grants that may have different requirements than what some of the federal ones do. So it's always worth a shot to give that a try and file the FAFSA. Molly kind of touched on this a little bit in the beginning, and that is not using the correct website. Just as she said, the first F in FAFSA stands for free. And so if you are ever on a website that tries to make you pay to file a FAFSA, you're on the wrong one, and you need to go back to our presentation and take a look at the right website to use. You should always try to file your FAFSA as soon as possible after October 1. There are some types of grants that have a limit on when they will be available, and it's on a first come, first served basis. So the sooner you can get it done after October 1st, the better. Not filing your FAFSA with enough process time for schools to review. So if you plan on starting school on August 17th, which is when Jefferson starts, you might want to try to get it done a little bit before August 16th because we're not going to get it in time. There's at least a 3 to 5 day processing time for it to even load into our system. And then there is also some processing time to actually get the awards onto your account. And there, if you are selected for verification, that'll take some additional time as well. Not getting an FSA ID before filling it out. And if you can't remember your FSA ID, you might want to go ahead and get that going before you start sitting down to actually fill it out. Not reading carefully. You need to pay very close attention to the questions that they're asking you and to be sure that you're inputting the correct information. If you mistype a number or put too many zeros, it could really affect your expected family contribution. So you need to be careful that the information that you're putting on there is correct. That's another really good plug for the IRS Data Retrieval tool because that takes that error away from the person and it's just a natural, just happens on its own. Not reporting the required information. If they're asking for the information on the FAFSA and you do not put it in there, your FAFSA may be rejected. So you need to make sure it's all there. And finally, not signing the FAFSA form. That is what you would do with the FSA ID. So just going back to that, how important that is.
Yeah, I guess, Lindsay, we could also say too, a worst case scenario is that signature sheet. I know recently I did have to assist a student with a signature page. That's as we're getting here very, very close to all kinds of deadlines, having the signature page is a last resort. But yeah.
It's always good to have as much of it ready to go as possible when you fill that out. So, but yeah, that's where we can help you as a financial aid office. We can get you through some of those sticky places when we need to.
Definitely.
Well, if anyone's on here and has questions, we'd be happy to answer them. You can enter them in the comments. We'll do our best to help out.
I'll say hi to Miss Ingram since she said hello, and I know she's used our services over at KCAC, so miss seeing her face too. So.
Well, Molly, do you want to talk a little bit about KCAC and what you can provide for people?
Yeah, for sure. So right now we are providing remote services, no in-person services quite yet, but you can request some one-on-one services via our website, kentuckianaworks.org/KCAC. And we help students from, again, creating their FSA ID to completing a FAFSA application, making sure that they are getting access to their own college's resources. We also assist students. I'll talk about what we've helped out with more recently with getting them plugged into resources at the colleges that they attend, and certainly this verification process if they have any type of technology problems or not sure how to upload things, and we help them again from kind of step 1 to 100 if need be with the entire college going process.
And Molly and I communicate almost on a daily basis through email. So if you happen to get a hold of Molly or somebody else at KCAC and she needs to get in touch with us at Jefferson, or vice versa, it's a very easy transition. So if you come to us and say, I need help filing the FAFSA, we might say, well, Molly can help. Or if Molly has already helped you file your FAFSA, but there's a verification issue, she'll shoot that email over to me, and I'm more than happy to get you going and into the right people's hands to help finish the process. We are also not in our offices currently, but we are on campus some, especially in the next couple of weeks. We're taking appointments, and there's some more information about that coming out, but we are trying our best to help as much as we can in a virtual world, and are happy to receive emails with questions. And that would just be our Jefferson-financial aid at kctcs.edu email address. Looks like there.
Yeah, let's see.
Did
you see what Maria's saying here?
It's Maya Langley, our friend over at Shelby County. I have had a few students who were positive that they filled out their FAFSA in October, but they come to find out it was for 1920. That does happen, and something that we can help figure out, but you need to be very careful when you're filing your FAFSA, especially since you can file it so early, that you're selecting the correct year to file under. If you are before June 30th, so not now, but before June 30th, both the 1920 FAFSA and the 2021 FAFSA were available on the FAFSA website. So it could have been a very easy error to make, to think, okay, I'm coming in the fall of 2020. Do I need to do the 1920 or the 2021? So the fall in terms of the FAFSA is always considered the header. And so if the fall is 20, you would want to do the 2021. If it's the spring of 2020, then you would do the 1920 FAFSA. And it can get complicated. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to either of us and we'd be happy to guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, that was definitely a good question.
Yes, great question. And it is a source of confusion for sure. And thank you to everyone who just said hi and that they appreciate help and everything. So that's great. Just checking the chat. I don't think I see anything new. As we are kind of watching, I'll just say real quickly though, as we are about to get started on the fall semester, we are very excited to get this to get this new year started. But if you have any FAFSA questions, or if you haven't even started yet, then please feel free to reach out to either of our areas and we'll get you going in the right. It's not too late. We can help you out. So that.
You cut out there for me just for a second there, Lindsay. Just for a second, but yeah, I definitely know that we're live now, but this will be put up on the jctc.me/YouTube for future reference as well.
Okay, I think then we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. And we want to thank everyone for joining us today. And we hope you were able to get some good information. And feel free to reach out to either of our offices if you have any additional questions.